Hey there, Duke fans. Episode 599, almost at 600. We're going to have that for you like in the next 24 hours. Episode 599 here of the DBR, the Duke Basketball Roundup. I'm Jason Evans. I'm here with Donald Wine. All right, we're going to say it. We've calmed a little bit.
Have we?
Yeah,
Have
right.
we?
Yeah, maybe that's up for debate. I don't know. I'm not frothing at the mouth the way I was when we recorded last night about the court storming. This is going to be our full recap of the Blue Devils game against Wake Forest. An outstanding game. I mean, sort of lost in the furor over the post game insanity is that this was a truly, truly outstanding basketball game and one that we have a lot to say about. And don't worry, we're going to say more about the court storming as well. We have more on that. By the way, folks, if you didn't listen to our previous episode that we recorded last night, Donald and I hopped on and for 15 minutes ranted and raved about how angry we are at the treatment that the Blue Devils got from the Wake Forest fans, the Wake Forest administration, Wake Forest security, everything associated with Lawrence Joel Coliseum. Last night, or yesterday afternoon, I should say, when the court was stormed. Donald, I want to, if I can, moratorium on that for the moment. Let's do our business and talk about the game. 40 minutes of action, and then more on the court storming. But folks, if you haven't listened to that episode, pause right now, stop what you're doing, check your feed, go back to the DBR Bites about the court storming, and listen to what we have to say.
Or you can just combine the two, right? You can listen
Yeah,
to this one since we'll talk about this later. It could be like a nice little addendum,
could
if you will.
flow. Yeah, exactly.
A pre-dendum, I guess. It's before, so pre-dendum. Whatever.
Whatever it is. Yeah, right. But let's get to the game, Donald. This is a contest that Wake Forest wins 83-79. To call it a back and forth game doesn't even do it justice. I think I read there were 14 ties and 14 lead changes.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
for a neutral team. Like if you were a neutral fan wanting to watch, this was an extremely good basketball game, back and forth between two really good teams. And before we get into the headlines and stuff, very quickly, everyone who was saying Wake Forest should be on the bubble, the Joe Lunardis of the world, like if they didn't watch that game and come away thinking
Yeah.
that Wake Forest was an NCAA tournament team, I don't know what else to sell them, because that was a very good game by both teams, and Wake Forest won in the end.
Yeah. I mean, come on. There's no way to watch that contest and not think that Wake Forest, the advanced metrics, Ken Pomeroy tells you they're the 18th best team in the country, number 18. Come on, what are we debating NCAA tournament bids for a team like that? I mean, this is just crazy. The advanced metrics, which are smarter than the eye test in many cases, absolutely prove that Wake Forest is a very, very impressive opponent. And this was we knew this was going to be a really difficult game. I said before the game in our preview, I said, this is the single game that I think Duke is most likely to lose of all the remaining games on the schedule. All right, let's get to the headlines. Interestingly, Donald didn't get a lot of headlines. And this happens sometimes after a loss. But I think the other thing was we got a lot of emails from people who were like, I'm pissed off about the court storming.
Yeah. There was a lot of people who were like, no headline today. Like their title of their email said, no headline today. Just want to rant. Like
Right.
we get it, and we're here for it. DBRpodcast@gmail.com if you want to continue to send stuff when the refs don't get out of their own way, or again fans storm the court. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly. So I only have three headlines I want to get to. Anthony Sherry said Wake Forest proves to be the hunter, but Duke's demise is self-inflicted, referencing Hunter Salas and Duke's turnovers at the end of the game that were quite costly. Chris Immershine gave us Wake players and fans charge over Duke toward NCAA bid. Woo! Accurate, Chris. That's all I can say. That is very accurate.
Yep.
And the K-Man, David Kerman, not a headline, but I hadn't thought of this. Really, really interesting observation from the K-Man. He said, he was having visions of the Notre Dame football game. Notre Dame football game. You remember that, Donald? Where
I mentioned it on I mentioned on the episode yesterday. How we're looking at this game and we should be saying, hey, that was actually, we had a really good game. We just fell short. It's a good loss against a good team, and we're talking about instead a player being hurt, a star player being hurt at that.
And that is exactly what the K-Man pointed out, that, you lose a great game to a good opponent and you also lose your best player to injury, and it turns the entire season around. I don't believe that is the case regarding Duke. I've now heard from multiple people who are familiar with how Kyle Filipowski was doing after the game. And it looks like this is not going to be a lasting injury, which is very, very good news. As you mentioned on our thing when we were talking about the court storming, Donald, he was walking around, he was upright and apparently fully mobile in post game interviews and the such. So it appears that the fan running into his knee did not cause any lasting damage. It probably was just like more the shock of the moment that caused him to fall, to almost fall to the ground. But anyway, bottom line is, that's what we got for headlines. Not a lot of stuff there. Donald, let's get right to the good. And I'm going to begin with Kyle Filipowski. 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 10-5-5 game there. Led the team in all 3 of those major categories. When you lead your team in scoring, rebounds, and assists, not bad, man. Not bad. His 3-pointer that he hit, which was Duke's final, I think, yeah, that was Duke's final points. Yeah, that gave him exactly 1,000 points on his career. Not even 2 years in. That's amazing. It's not difficult to do. I think it's only been done, I want to say it's 8 times in modern Duke history. I believe that's the case. So
he's the 69th Blue Devil to reach the milestone of 1,000 points. I believe he's the 8th player to do it in just his first 2 seasons.
Right, exactly. Which is just really amazing. Look, he was just 1 of 6 on 3-pointers, and Duke seems better, I think, when he's taking more 2s and fewer 3s. I'm not saying he should stop taking 3s, but I think Duke's better when he's like around 3 or 4 3-pointers in a game, and where he's taking, 8 to 10 2-pointers in a game. In this game, he only took 7 2s and 6 3s. I'd like that balance to be tilted a little bit more toward the 2-pointers. But look, again, he played an outstanding game, played almost 38 minutes, didn't really get in foul trouble while battling against one of the bigger front lines that he's going to see all season in Wake Forest. A couple very physical, well, if you include Matthew Marsh, 3 very physical guys. I thought Flip finished fairly well through traffic. Just overall, a very, very effective game from him.
I liked his approach on the inside, right? And even the outside shots, as you mentioned, he missed 5 of them, but they were open shots. They were taken for the most part within the flow of the offense of what he gave him. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 shots in there that I would have considered ill-advised, but really inside, I thought he was masterful at not just establishing himself in the paint, but also working in his teammates. He found a lot of guys on the perimeter for shots. He found a lot of, a few of Tyrese Proctor's 3s were as a result of
5 assists from your big man is a really big number. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's I'm not comparing him to Nikola Jokic, but it's that type of awareness on the court, right? Being able to understand that, hey, I know I'm 2 feet from the basket, but this guy 20 feet from the basket may have a better shot than me, and finding him and putting it in a position where that person, all he has to do is catch and shoot. I think that's the thing about Kyle Filipowski that we need the most, is not necessarily for him to be passing the ball. I want him to go for his. I want him to get his 17, 18, 20 points. But at the end of the day, I think him being on the inside makes him more of a triple threat so far this season than he is when he's out in the perimeter, which is funny because last year, if you remember, he would start on the perimeter quite a bit and use his bully ball tactics to kind of move his way into the paint into a position where he would be able to score. But that didn't allow him to pass the ball. Now he's in a position where he's learned, hey, I can be in a position to score, but I can also be in a position to pass it to somebody who may have a better shot than me that's further out. 3s are better than 2s in a lot of instances. But for him, the best shot is not always when the ball is in his hands. And I think he's learned that this year. This is where we need to start applying it. And yesterday, I thought he was very effective at that. And again, on the glass, we've talked about how well he's been. It's several points in the glass, but grabbing 8 rebounds was especially crucial because a lot of them, again, we got a couple of second chancers, and he was able to also just establish a force on defense that inside the paint was his.
Yeah, you're causing me to segue into something I had a little bit lower down, but you mentioned his 8 rebounds. It's worth noting that this was not a game with a lot of rebounds to be had because both teams were shooting so well. Duke ended up winning the rebounding battle in this game 28-20. That's a big number. To win it by 8 in a game where they're less than 50 rebounds total, that's a really big number. And Flip was a huge part of that. By the way, Donald, we talked about it. Duke out rebounding their opponent for the first time all year. Duke out rebounded their opponent and lost the game. We're now 16-1 in games where we win the rebounding battle. but it was still hugely important, I think, for us to win the rebounding battle in this game. Wake only had 4 offensive rebounds in this game, and 2 of them were balls that ended up going out of bounds. They were not live ball
Yeah.
rebounds that, you can easily turn around and make a pick, put back, or, relocate the ball to someone on the perimeter, with scrambling defense. I just thought Duke did a really, really nice job. Again, Wake is a really big team with a lot of guys. Cameron Hildreth gets in there and rebounds a lot, and they've got the 2 bit. Duke did a really great job on the boards, and it's a pity it wasn't rewarded with a victory.
Also, at least one of those offensive rebounds that you mentioned went out of bounds, actually went out of bounds off a Wake player. They
Yes.
didn't review it. And then on the ensuing inbound, they get a 3-pointer. And that was very late in the game. And that kind of changed the trajectory of how that game ended up. And again, I'm not, again, putting it on the rest of that point. That was a missed call. They happen in these games. But yeah, it shows how effective we were, that even their offensive rebounds, 2 of them were ones that, like, we still went for it and it bounced off of us, or they at least called it off of us. That is what we call, the effort that you were talking about. It was reflected in that. And Jason, I also want to say, in basketball, as you know, there's a nice rule for shooting. If you're a really good shooter, or as a team, it's called 50-40-90, right? 50% from the floor, 40% from 3, 90% from the line. Well, yesterday we were 53% from the floor, 44% from 3, and 80% from the line. 50-40-80 is still really good. And again, we've had our shooting woes from the line, but 16 for 20, 80%, you can't ask for much more than that. Of course, we want to make all our free throws, but shooting 80% from the line is something that Wake Forest does. We actually outshot Wake at the line. So that's really good. The fact is, this game wasn't lost because we had a bad shooting night. We may have missed some shots, but throughout the course of the game, we were shooting very well. And I think that's what led to how the excitement of this being such a back and forth game, because as Wake was getting hot, we would get hot. There was very few stretches where one team would take a huge lead and the other team would catch up. It was just, I think the biggest lead on either side was 5 or 6 points.
Yeah.
So this was a back and forth game, and it was because we were shooting well.
Yeah, look, a moment ago we were talking about the bigs. I want to sort of wrap up, continuing to talk about the bigs. I've mentioned several times, Carr and Reed. Wake has 2 outstanding big men, and I thought Duke really effectively countered a lot in this game with Ryan Young alongside Kyle Filipowski. We saw Young and Flip playing together more than they usually do. And look, I know Ryan Young did not fill up the box score, 3 points, 3 rebounds, 11 minutes, but I thought he really impacted the game. And I thought his presence on the floor was a positive for Duke. So then I go to look at the box score at the end of the game to sort of, see if my observations of Duke's play while Ryan Young was in the game are backed up. And wait until you hear this number, man. Duke's plus minus in Ryan Young's 11 minutes. Duke was plus 18.
Mm-hmm.
That is outrageous. That is just a huge number. It shows you what a difference Ryan Young made in this contest. And again, not a guy who's going to fill up the box score. Not a guy who, you're going to, oh, he had a double-double or something like that. 3 points, 3 rebounds. You're like, yeah, so what? I'm telling you, he was making a difference. Playing really great help defense, setting some very, very effective screens, just impacting the game in ways that don't show up in the box score on both ends of the floor. That's what you want from a guy like Ryan Young. And I thought it was, I actually think 3.3 rebounds. I actually think this is one of his best games of the year.
We talk about, plus minus, and how it's not always an indicator of how the game goes, or how a player affected the game, right? Sometimes they're very skewed. And sometimes you're like, oh, this guy was on the floor and had 34 points at a -2, plus minus. Clear that he was affecting the game more than -2 points. In this case, the one time where we kind of look at the plus minus and go, oh, snap, is when it's a really close back and forth game and someone has a very skewed number, right? On this side, Ryan Young plus 18 in a 4-point game.
Yeah.
That didn't circulate more than 6 points either way. Like, that's a huge number. That shows how, again, like you mentioned, this the one time where I kind of look at it and go, hey, the stats don't reflect how this person played, because like you said, when he was on the court, we were able to do so many more things with the basketball on offense. And then on defense, the same way. We were able to kind of shift some of our responsibilities around and make it where another guy, had to try and beat us, right? Like Hunter Sallis was going off, and we kind of expected him to do that. He's one of the better players in the ACC. but you have to make it where there was times where he was effective. He met, a lot of the guys around him had to feed off, other players like Hunter Sallis and try and pass off, but also he was forcing late shots, right? Late shots that are late in the shot clock, one rebound, and he would grab it, or someone else would grab it because he was boxing out his man so that that guy couldn't get it. So the ball was free for Jared McCain or Flip to kind of go grab it and go. I think that's the quality of Ryan Young. He doesn't need 17 points a game. He doesn't need 10 rebounds a game. He just wants to be on the floor for someone else to get 17 points and 10 rebounds and help with that. I think that's the cool thing is, people we've talked about roles on this team. Ryan Young has a different role this year than he did last year. And he's filling it just as well this year at many, many stretches as he has last year. So I'm really happy with the effort.
Yeah, so I want to go from I was talking about big men. I want to move on to the guards, and I'm gonna start with Tyrese Proctor, who I think had a really outstanding week. Tyrese in this game was more aggressive hunting his shot. He did the same thing against Miami, and I really love to see that from him. We haven't seen a lot of that from him this season, but the past two games, it's like since he came back from that sort of concussion, it's like hitting his head on the floor last weekend, last 2 Mondays ago against Wake Forest, may have knocked him out a little bit, but it also woke him up because he's taking more shots. He had 10 field goal attempts in this game, second most in the team. Hit 4 of 8 from three-pointer. Yes, I will take that. Look, I want to see his assist numbers get a little bit better, but I think that part of that was Wake is so good at preventing assists. We talked about how Wake is one of these teams that does an outstanding job at preventing assists. And I also think that Tyrese Proctor started several of your so-called hockey assists where he made the pass that led to the pass that led to the pass that led to the shot.
Yep.
And I can live with that in this game. But I just thought Proctor, I love seeing him with double-digit field goal attempts. I think that's a good thing for Duke. And then I also wanted to briefly mention Jeremy Roach. Absolutely had moments of this game, little stretches where it felt like he was taking over the contest. Shoot 6 of 8 from the field, super efficient. His foul trouble limited him to only 28 minutes. That's a real pity. If Roach plays his typical 35 plus, Duke's a better team when Jeremy Roach is on the floor. And I think that maybe that might have been the difference in this contest.
On Tyrese Proctor, you mentioned that he had a couple of hockey assists that led to points. One of them, Jason, was a hockey assist that ended with him scoring the points. It was a hockey assist where he kind of got the ball. He passed it to one guy. I think who passed it to Flip.
Right.
Was driving lane. Flip passed it back out to him and hit the three. And like as soon as he shot it, like I was watching with my best friend and Godson, and I just reached over and we just high fived because I was like, that was a great, great team play that started with Tyrese Proctor. It ended with Tyrese Proctor. You don't see that very often. But also, you mentioned Jeremy Roach. I also want to mention Jared McCain. Jared McCain, 3 for 4 from 3, 15 points, 5 rebounds. It's almost becoming where we go, oh, he only had 15 points and 5 rebounds. It was a very slow game for him. But no, he was very effective in all facets of the game, especially on offense. He was able to really assert himself. I think the one thing, Jason, the 14 points that Tyrese Proctor had led to the fact that the bench points, right? He had 14 points. Ryan Young, I believe, had 3. The bench outscored Wake 17-3. And I believe it was pretty skewed the other way last time we played them because Tyrese Proctor, I think, was in the starting lineup and he eventually got hurt. And Caleb Foster wasn't as effective off the bench as Tyrese Proctor was in this game. So shout out to those two especially. But I think the guards, again, contributed to what was an exciting game, but the guards shooting and hitting their threes at very, very opportune moments kept this game close and kept us with a chance to win until the end.
Yeah, and Duke had an outstanding shooting game. I mean, there's you mentioned, the 60-40-90 that they the 50-40-90, I should say, that they came, or 6, sorry. I'm going to get it right. 60-40-90. Yeah, they
50.
came.
No, you're right. 50-40-90. That's the
50-40-90, right.
Yep.
The reason I'm saying 60 is that Wake had a 60-40-90. Wake actually had a 60-50, 60% on their threes, 50% on their twos. And Donald, I think we have to transition, unless you got something else in the good. I'm ready to transition to the bad.
No, we could talk about it. I mean, I'll just say very quickly, second chance points, we outscored them 13-5. We had the fast break 3 from Jared McCain. There was not a lot of fast break opportunities in this game. And I think credit to the defense, because yes, in the game that was it wasn't truly like very high scoring, but in a game that there were a lot of fast break moments, I thought our fast break defense was incredible in limiting them to missed shots or even turnovers. We were able to force some steals off of some of these fast break opportunities that Wake Forest had. And again, the defense, there's a lot that they did right, and there's some things that they did bad. But I think at the end, the fast break, we limited their opportunities, and that's what kept us a close game.
All right, so let's get to the bad. I just want to quickly mention one thing. You had Jared McCain in the good. I wanted to mention in the bad that he only got 7 shots. That's his lowest number of field goal attempts since the Arkansas game. Remember when we played Arkansas like a year and a half ago?
Yep.
He
It was
has
literally
had
last year, Jason.
Yeah, right. He has had 9+ shot attempts in every game that Duke has played since the Pitt loss in January, mid-January, more than a month ago. Jared McCain's just got to get more than 7 shots in a contest. I mean, he was super effective, as you noted, hitting his threes, able to get in the lane and create stuff. We got to find a way to make sure we get him more than 7 shots. But okay, so that was the beginning of my bad. That's a pretty minor bad thing to mention. I think, Donald, we have to start with the end of half and end of game execution. Duke has 11 turnovers in this game, which is, not great, but not awful. But the timing of these turnovers was so terrible. At the end of the game, Roach fumbles the ball away. Tyrese Proctor essentially tosses it out of bounds on 2 possessions where Duke had chances to tie or take the lead, or, 2 possessions where you had to have a shot. And Duke doesn't even get the ball inside the 3-point line. Like literally, just as you cross over half court, you fumble the ball away or you toss it out of bounds. Such heartbreaking in a game where the offensive execution was outstanding for both teams throughout the entire contest. Duke quite literally had 2 of its worst offensive possessions, probably its 2 worst offensive possessions of the entire game in the final minute.
It was even worse than that. It was the last 4 or 5 possessions. We got 1 shot off, and it was the really quick 3 by Tyrese Proctor. Jeremy Roach, again, all these are uncharacteristic. And even after the game, I'll get to Roach's comments in the second half of the game, but Roach comes down, he gets the ball taken from him. They go down, they lay it up. He comes back down, tries to force it into the paint. He gets stripped out of bounds, turnover. The next possession down, Tyrese Proctor shoots the 3 that's ill-advised. Wake misses a free throw at the other end, and we still have the ball. We have a chance to tie it with a 3, I want to say. And Tyrese Proctor.
No. It was a 2-point game. A 3 would have won it, and a 2 would have tied it. Yeah.
It was a 2 would have tied it. A 3 would have won the game. He's trying to find Filipowski on the wing in transition. And
throws it behind him.
It throws it behind him, and it bounces off Filipowski out of bounds. Those are your last 5 possessions there. So it was uncharacteristic of this team. And Jeremy Roach, after the game, he faced the media and he just said, quote, "I think we just made too many careless mistakes, scouting report mistakes, knowing your personnel mistakes, leaving wide open shooters, jumping off people who don't shoot the ball, just careless mistakes." And I put it on myself as well. And that leads me to the most part of my bad is Wake Forest was hitting some very tough shots throughout the game. And again, they were very hot.
Man, Andrew Carr hit some shots. I was just like, wow.
And they were
taking that, man. You ain't gonna keep hitting that. Wow.
There were some guys that were hitting some ridiculous 3-point shots, like runners, like running, falling away from the basket, one arm, like what Patrick, you can say, step back, one-legged, like what kind of shot is that type of stuff? They weren't working on those shots, but they were going in. And so those get frustrating at a time. But there were times late in the game where you go, okay, we know who's supposed to have the ball in their hands. We know who's going to be dangerous in certain spots. We've seen it happen so far in this game. Let's hone in on them. And there's a lot of, like, as Roach said, kind of leaving guys wide open who shouldn't be wide open. They were knocking down threes.
Hunter Salas. Oh my God.
Hunter Salas, like Cameron Hildreth, getting in the paint. Andrew Carr, as you mentioned, like getting into spots where even though he was making tough shots, those are shots that he makes. Like those little, again, details that Wake Forest at the end executed much better than we do. And this is not this is on everybody, right? This is on the players, it's on the coaches. Execution down the stretch just wasn't where it needed to be and where it has been, frankly, the last 3 weeks. Like I thought end of half, end of game execution that we've had the last 3 weeks, I thought it's been very good. It just wasn't yesterday. And at the end of the first half, you have the Jalen Blake's air ball, and
Oh
then
my gosh.
and then a charge call or whatever to end the half. Like again, I think
No.
those are
Hold
little
on. Hold on.
things.
Let me discuss what. So the end of the half was again Jalen Blake's airballing a three.
Mhm.
Duke then got a possession back with they could run the clock pretty much out. Like we got it
Right.
with 31 and a half seconds or so.
31, it was 30.5 seconds and it was a 30-second shot clock. And you're talking about the Cal Filipowski like
Oh,
three-pointer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Airball three-pointer, just really bad. Wrong time to take it. 5 seconds left. And as a result, Wake gets to come the other direction. They're scrambling, and Blake's makes a foul that gives them two free throws. A
Two
really
free
bad
throws.
foul. Look, Jalen Blake's is a smart player. He knows what he does effectively. He knows what not to do. To have him in a game like this take that really bad three-pointer and and then commit that foul at the end of the half, it meant that rather than it being, I don't know, like a 4 or a 6 point lead or more than that for Duke, it was just a 2 point game. And that, that there's just a big difference in a multi-possession game versus a single possession game. And by the way, Duke has now led 20 games at halftime this season. And Duke is 19-1 in those games. For the first time all year, Duke had a halftime lead that they gave up to Wake Forest. But that halftime lead should have been bigger.
And that foul that Jalen Blake's had, I was frustrated about it because it's again uncharacteristic, a mistake. But it was also a
Wait,
hustle
you were
mistake.
frustrated. Did you see John Shire?
Well, no,
Oh,
look,
wow. Not
forget
happy.
all that. Forget all that. Like the point is that was a hustle mistake. Usually you're not frustrated at hustle mistakes. It was the timing of the hustle mistake. Like he reached out to try and tip the ball away and would have ended when he like if he had looked up at the scoreboard, that foul came with what 0.2 seconds left. Like if he hadn't even touched it, right? If he had just let it go, they wouldn't have gotten a shot off. But because he didn't look at the time, he went for the hustle play, which I'm 99.9% of the time, I'm like, yo, that's cool. Go for the hustle play. He just missed. He got a finger on it, but he just missed it and got his hand on the defender or on the player and was called for a foul. So again, it's a game of inches sometimes in basketball, and it was none more apparent than this game. If he is if he's a half second too slow, it's halftime and it doesn't matter. If he's a half second too fast, he gets the ball and he's going the other way, maybe with the time to throw up a prayer as the thing. But he was right on time to get a foul. And so that's where it's most frustrating. It's those little details that are the difference between us talking about a win today and now we're talking about a loss and everything that happened after.
All right. I got two of the things I really, really quickly want to mention in the bad. We've already talked a bit about Wake's shooting. I just want to give people the numbers. They hit 64.5% of their 2 point shots and 53% of their threes. Again, 64.5% of your 2 point shots, 53% of your 3 pointers. Like, how was Duke even in this game? we should be thrilled that it was as close and tight a game as it was, considering how hot Wake was on the offensive end of the floor, especially in that second half. And then I got to get to this. Okay, earlier I mentioned Ryan Young had the plus 18 in his 11 minutes, which is just super impressive. There's someone else on Duke whose plus minus just sticks out like a sore thumb. Mark Mitchell. Mark Mitchell's plus minus was negative 20 in a 4 point game, where like no one else, other than the huge plus number for Ryan Young, everyone else is like, within a plus minus of like +6 to -6 or so. And then Mark Mitchell's at negative 20. I thought he was mostly ineffective at stopping Andrew Carr or anyone else on D. Like, I didn't feel him on defense the way I usually do. And Mark's been a major factor on offense for Duke this year, not in this game. Just 6 points. He only has 4 rebounds. By the way, one of those rebounds was like a meaningless free throw rebound miss where there was no competition for it. Like, Mark wasn't as good as Duke did on the boards. They were not doing good on the boards because of Mark Mitchell. And you talked about Duke hit most of their free throws. You know who missed the free throws? Mark Mitchell. He was just 2 of 5 at the free throw line. He accounted for 3 of Duke's 4 free throw misses. I don't expect anybody to be perfect at the free throw line. That's unrealistic. Duke on this game mostly shot well from from the free throw line. They're going to be foolish takes out there. People who are going to say, if Mark Mitchell doesn't miss those free 3 free throws and Duke wins this game. That's just dumb. Everyone's going to miss free throws now and then, but we gotta be honest about things. Mark Mitchell had an ineffective game at both ends of the floor, and even when he got to the free throw line, he wasn't effective. That's just the truth. And negative 20, again, just jumps out at you off the page. Part of that's on Mark's teammates because he wasn't the only one out there. But man, for one guy to be on the floor and for the team to get outscored by 20 points in a close game like this, it sort of says something about his performance.
And it negated, as you mentioned, Ryan Young's, because if you think about it, if you think about them as one position, it ended up being a total combined effort of -2. So as effective as Ryan Young was at all the things you just mentioned, Mark Mitchell was not yesterday. And that's unfortunate because he's had such a good, few weeks on both offense and defense. Like, as a couple weeks ago, he was the MVP for multiple games in a row, according to KenPom. So it's not this is not ragging on him. This is, hey, it was a bad game at the wrong time. And that happens. I will say, Jason, a couple things left that I had was, one, you mentioned that in the preview that Wake Forest does not allow teams to pass on you and get a lot of assists. Well, that was evident yesterday. We had 12 assists and 26 made baskets. That's a little low for us, especially considering that we had almost 20 assists the game before
against
that
Miami,
where we were passing the ball on every possession. And the other thing was we kind of regressed a little bit inside the paint. There's a lot of times where we didn't go strong to the basket. And I will note that Wake Forest did not register a block against us, but a lot of it was because we were doing a lot of those fadeaways inside of 5 feet instead of going up towards the basket. And as I mentioned, sometimes you're going to go to the basket and you're going to get your stuff sent to the other route. That's fine. Don't do it every play, but go to strong. You're either going to make the basket, you're going to get the foul, or you're going to get blocked. This time around, we kind of didn't force their hand because we were shooting fadeaways, and a lot of those fadeaways were the ones that kind of hit the back rim and came back out. So I'm looking for those guys to go a little bit stronger to the rim. Again, something that we had been doing much better lately and just kind of regressed a little bit against Wake Forest. That's not the difference between us winning and losing, but those little details all add up. All these details that we talk about are little nitpicky things that when you put them together, it's the difference between a 4-point win, as you mentioned, or 4-point loss that we're talking about today.
Well, and you're talking a little bit about, guys taking it up strong and are you getting to the free throw line as a result? Duke committed 20 personal fouls in this game. Wake Forest only committed 12. Efton Reed, he ends the game with 4 personal fouls, but he mostly stayed out of foul trouble. He was able to play 33 minutes in this contest. And you're right. I think that what we mostly saw on the inside was Duke fading away from Reed as opposed to going up and challenging him. Look, he is a load. He's 240 plus pounds. I'm not surprised that Duke doesn't really want to go up into his body all that much because dude is big. But yeah, I thought we could have done a better job of that. Hey, Donald, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we're going to do our player of the game. We're going to do our player of the week and court storming. We are going to talk more about the huge controversy blowing up all over college basketball as a result of the end of this Duke Wake game and what happened after the buzzer sounded.
Hey everyone, Jason and Donald here from the Duke Basketball Roundup. And as the NFL season comes to an end, the college hoops and NBA seasons are heating up at MyBookie. Turn your basketball knowledge and skill into wins at MyBookie, where every shot, every spin, and every bet opens the door to a payday.
Hey, whether you're backing your favorite team, I wonder who that could be, Duke, or seeking the thrill of a casino win, MyBookie provides a world-class betting experience. You can get a 50% bonus on your first deposit at mybookie.ag with the promo code DukeMBB, Duke MBB, and you will be able to experience the thrill of backing your favorite team, hundreds of player props, and the allure of MyBookie's casino. Even easier, you can use the link in the show notes here from this episode. It'll take you directly there.
That's right, Jason. And from the latest slots to classic table games, MyBookie offers a one-stop shop from the court to the casino. It has it all. So follow the link in the show notes, or again, use promo code Duke MBB to cash out and win, or let it ride at MyBookie. Bet and play absolutely anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
Back from the break, Donald, we've got to do our play of the game. I actually have two interesting nominees, but I'll let you go first because maybe you'll take one of mine and then I'll be able to do the other.
Well, I hope it's Jared McCain hitting the fast break three in the second half. It was the only fast break points that we had all game, but when he hit it, that felt like a moment where, I think we went up 5 or 6 at that point. There were some fans in the front row on like the non-TV side that were kind of chirping at some of those players, especially Jared McCain, every time we came down the floor. And when he hit that three, he kind of turned around and just like, threw up the three sign, and to everybody in the arena was basically like, hey, sorry, better call a timeout and get your stuff together because it's my time now. I thought that was at that time, I thought it was a pivotal moment. And when he hit it, I was excited because I was like, oh, if Jerry McCain is going to be hitting these, where they immediately, again, the ball, I don't think it hit the ground before Steve Forbes motion for a timeout. That's how like pivotal play it was at the time. But that was my play of the game.
Yeah, that came with about 11:40 left in the second half. That's one of my two choices. I'll give you the other one in a second. Duke was up 1 at the time, so the McCain three put them up 4. And by the way,
Okay.
that three started at the other end of the floor. He was guarding Hunter Salas. Salas went in the lane, and McCain blocked his shot. And Ryan Young got the rebound and fed Jared, who was racing the other direction, and got that running three on the fast break. Amazing, amazing play. My other nominee was another Jared McCain play that begins with him on defense with about 13:40 left in the second half and Duke down 3. McCain got a steal on Cameron Hill. Cameron Hill was sort of on a fast break, and Jared McCain gets the steal. And it led to a fast break the other direction where Tyrese Proctor ended up getting a 3-pointer to tie the game at 53. I thought
It was
that
that
was
Travis
another.
Alvarado type of steal too, like where he came up from, kind of snuck around from
Yeah,
behind him.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love the Alvarado. Yeah, Georgia Tech. That dude will be there forever. Yeah. So those are my two nominees for play of the game. They were both, and they both start with Jared McCain playing really good D. We have seen he's been a difference maker at both ends of the floor lately. Man, heck of a player. All right. With that, let's get to player of the week. Who you got?
I got Kyle Filipowski, 32 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists, and 3 blocks on the week. And again, he was the KenPom MVP against Miami, and I think he was one of the better players for us against Wake yesterday. But I think this is a week where you had a couple of guys that you could probably consider for player of the week, but I think mine's Kyle Filipowski.
And I completely agree with you. I also had Kyle Filipowski. I was going to cite those same numbers you did. I was going to add one more number to them. In addition to having 9 assists, he only had 2 turnovers on the week. Really nice assist to turnover ratio. And one more number on 2-point shots in the lane. Kyle was 8 for 11 this week. Now, I'd love to see that 11 be more like a 15. Take
Right.
more 2-point shots, Kyle. When you get the ball down in the post, baby, post up a little bit more. But I thought he was outstanding. Like you said, this is a week where we had a ton of guys in double digits. We had really balanced scoring in both of the games. But Kyle had a little something extra that gives him the player of the week. All right, let's get back to the court storming. I wanted to really quickly note a little bit of stuff from the post-game press conferences, and then I'll let you get in. But so, Jon Scheyer, I thought it was very interesting. He said, at the very end of the game, he said he was hoping that, it's a 4-point game. He was hoping that maybe that, Duke could catch the ball, get fouled while attempting a 3-pointer, get to the free throw line. Things can happen if that kind of situation happens. And he says that's why he left his guys on the floor when they were down 4 with less than 2 seconds left. I think most of us would say, at that moment, Wake is 99+% to win. But I agree with Jon Scheyer. Keep your guys out there. Something crazy could happen. If a guy gets fouled, then things become very, very different. And so I understand why Scheyer kept his players out there. But Scheyer said, after he noted that he had them out there because he was hoping for a little 4-point miracle, he said, maybe I think I let my guys down by not taking them off the court. Donald, that's outrageous. I can't
agree.
believe that Jon Scheyer feels like he needs to blame himself for not evacuating his team from the floor at the end of a close competitive game. It's just wrong that Jon Scheyer should even have to say something like that. And it shows you how poorly Wake Forest did at controlling this situation. And it's worth noting the only reason Jon Scheyer said he could have taken his players off the floor was because there was a timeout called with 1.8 seconds left. Wake Forest security had a timeout to know what was going to happen. As I said, everyone knew at that point Wake was going to win the game. They could see the students surging. And the Wake Forest security, Duke needs to file a lawsuit. Wake needs to pay for what they did.
Look, I'm just going to say this very plainly. This is not Scheyer's fault, period. I know that he said the right things in the press conference and said, he's a coach. His job is to try and deflect some of the attention away from his players and from the incident and try to at least absorb some of the responsibility. I have no problem with him saying that. That doesn't mean it's true, right? Just because he said that he should have taken his players off doesn't mean it's true. He should not have taken the players off. Let's put it this way. Fans ran on the court with time still remaining on the clock. As you mentioned, there was 1.8 seconds left. They called a timeout, and he felt some responsibility, but he shouldn't. We're down 4. We had the ball. And like you said, a remote chance to tie, but we still had a chance, as they say. You're saying there's a chance? Yes, there's a chance. Stranger things have happened at the Circle K, all right? And no one, this is the thing that I think is most important, everyone to understand. No one in our team is expendable. I'm not about telling coaches to pull starters and put in bench warmers in harm's way. There should not have been a harm's way. That's the point. The point was there was a harm's way that occurred, and it did not matter who was on the floor. And look, we as Duke fans have excoriated UNC for when they just remove everybody from the court with 11 seconds left, and they take everybody off the floor. They call a timeout, and they do some ceremonious walking to the locker room where there's nobody on the floor, and they just run the 10 seconds out. I'm not about that. This is we cannot have players in harm's way. That is the point of this. Nobody that is on the floor deserves any blame for what happened on the floor because they were supposed to be there. The fans were not. And that is of a lot of things I need to say. I need to make it clear. This is not Scheyer's fault.
Yeah. So I said I wanted to talk about the post-game press conferences. I've talked about Jon Scheyer. I want to talk about Steve Forbes. Steve Forbes started his press conference. The very first thing he says is he starts talking about how loud, energetic, and enthusiastic the Wake Forest crowd was in this game. He says the best atmosphere since he's been there. I believe someone said it was the first sellout at Wake Forest in a decade.
In 7 years. Since Luke Kennard's team went there.
Right.
7 years ago.
So by the way, first of all, let's be clear. I'm gonna call the Wake Forest fans out. You haven't had a sellout in 7 years? What kind of fans are you? It's ridiculous. I mean, when was the last time Duke didn't have a sellout? It's probably been
1990.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been forever. And Wake Forest, you're excited that you got your first sellout in 7 years? You're lame. Your fans suck. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that. If you can't sell out a game in 7 years, they've had decent clubs. They have marquee teams coming to visit. How are you not selling out any games in 7 years? Hey, Steve Forbes, your fans are trash. Don't celebrate them for doing what they should do every damn game. And then Steve Forbes said, he goes, I don't like court storming. I hope he's okay. I'm sure the next time that happens, we'll do a better job at taking care of the situation. Steve Forbes, who's a guy, look, I went to the press conference with him at Duke, and I praised him for being honest and direct. I talked about, he seems like a real genuine guy. No emotion from him, no sense of shame. Shame. That's what Steve Forbes should be feeling right now. Embarrassment. His team was the talk of college basketball yesterday because they screwed up and did something horrible that every announcer in the country, every analyst out there felt they had to call Wake Forest to task. And Steve Forbes' response was, I hope we do a better job of taking care of that situation next time. That's bullshit, Donald. That's a bullshit response from a coach who's not taking responsibility. He should have come out. First thing he should have said is, look, I didn't get to see what happened, but a player got hurt because of our fans. That is unforgivable. And I'm going to tell our fans, you cannot ever do that kind of thing again. Instead, we'll take care to do better at it next time. Next time, buddy, You'd be lucky if there is a next time.
And Wake Forest, the school didn't. They put out a statement. I guess it was the athletic director put out a statement that wasn't much better, right? It was like, oh, we regret the incident and all this stuff, and we want to be a part of any conversations with the league about future changes to this policy. But look, man, like this is not. You can come out and say we're sorry that this happened. This is not something that we're about. We're very sorry. We hope that Kyle Filipowski, name him by name, we hope Kyle Filipowski and the other Duke players are okay and they finish rest of the season. You can still put the corporate spin on an apology statement like that. They didn't even do that. They just kind of said we regret the error. Is like it was a typo in a newspaper. Like you're in journalism, like that's the tone that they took with it. Now I think
lawyers, Donald, you're a lawyer. I'm a journalist. You're a lawyer. There were lawyers all over that. If I'm Wake Forest, they're lucky Kyle Filipowski apparently isn't more injured because lawsuit central, baby. This would be a bad one.
Yeah, it'd be really bad. And I think that's the thing, right? Is like as I mentioned, some teams don't care. Some schools don't care because they know. I mean, look, Wake Forest knows that that was shown on every sports highlight package show from here to Seattle, right? Everyone saw that. They may be talking about them in a bad way, but guess who they're talking about? They're talking about Wake Forest in a win. That's the publicity that they're selling. I think that's the bad part of all this is they clearly didn't care. And Jason, I'm not comparing Steve Forbes to any other coach out there. And I'm not saying that what he did or didn't do caused any of this. But I will say that coaches do have, when you mentioned that Steve Forbes could have come out and said, yo, this is not something we'll ever do again. Coaches do have some power in that regard, right?
Yeah.
Coach K would continuously, he'd get on the mic or he'd stomp his feet if the Cameron Crazies were doing something that he didn't like, and Cameron Crazies would stop immediately. I'll tell you another story. Very first game that David Cutcliffe was in charge for Duke football, the very first game I went, very exciting. We had come off a year where we hadn't won a game at all, and we were about to just destroy. I think it was East Carolina, but correct me if I'm wrong there. We were about to destroy some team, and all of us were about to storm the field. And this is in the middle of the fourth quarter. We're like trying to figure out how we do it. Like some people are like, yo, I forgot. We haven't done this in a while. And David Cutcliffe, in the middle of the game, in the middle of the fourth quarter, jogs over to the area where the students are. And he goes, hey, guys, let's not storm the field tonight. We'll save that for those expletives from Carolina. And everyone just went nuts. And you know what didn't happen? There was nobody on the field. He had at least the modicum to say, hey, we'll come celebrate with you, but y'all don't come out here. That's how we're doing that tonight. When we beat Carolina, go nuts. But that's our standard here. And Forbes could have easily, and I think next time what Forbes would probably do is kind of motion to the students, like wave them, like, no, don't come on the field. We'll come on the court. We'll come over there. The players will come over there. I think that's the key here. And again, Forbes is not responsible for this, but I do think next time he should understand that he does have the power to at least talk with the students beforehand and say, hey, when we beat UNC, when we beat this number one team in the country or whatever, like we're not rushing the court every single game, but when we do, we're going to do it responsibly, and here's how we're going to do it. These are things that should happen, but yeah, coaches and administrators do have a lot more power than they say that they do, and this is a case where the corporate speak just doesn't ring true.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about how people reacted to all of this.
Yes. Because, I got notes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, there are insane people out there on what formerly was Twitter and other social media channels. I think a lot of them are Carolina fans or people who are Duke haters. There's certainly a large number of those. I heard from one of the parents of one of the players in the Duke team who said that her son was just had the most horrible things said to him as he was exiting the court. And she's not a shrinking violet, and her son can take it. But she was like, this was just wrong. That the kids were subjected to this. And I had a conversation with her about what it's like to be a Duke fan, because she's fairly new to it, since her son arrived on campus. And we, Donald, you and I have experienced it for a long time. People hate Duke because of our success. And so there are people out there who are saying things like, oh, Kyle Filipowski started it. or Kyle Filipowski
Right.
initiated the contact. It's like so insane. Fran Fraschilla on Twitter said the people who say Kyle Filipowski is at fault, those people need professional help. Fran's actually absolutely right about that. I mean, Seth Davis.
And Fran is no Duke Homer either.
No, exactly. Seth Davis tweeted out a video where he said, "Pay attention to the second Wake fan to run by Kyle Filipowski. The guy punches Kyle in the back, shoves and punches Kyle in the back." And Seth Davis said, "You know, if you're defending Wake Forest fans, have a look at this guy." I saw Seth Greenberg, Pat Forty, all the top guys out there just outraged, you know, writing columns and appearing on television and on Twitter and the such to say how wrong this was and saying shame, shame, shame on Wake Forest. But I wanted to note Gary Parrish. Gary Parrish said on CBS, CBS's
It's like the video,
they're
streaming thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the CBS Sportsline show, whatever they call it. He said, look, you know, there are people out there who say someone's going to get hurt, you know, and Flip did get hurt, although hopefully not too badly. He's like, this is ridiculous. People have already been hurt. He said, you don't hear about it because they weren't prominent players like Kyle Filipowski. But he said, there are people hurt every year, fans and players, in court storming incidents at the high school level, at the college level. He goes, we don't tolerate this in the NBA. Why are we tolerating it in college? And then he took it one step further. Donald, you were talking about storming the field in football. He's like, you know, these fans that go for the goalposts, it's like, we get stories every few months. Someone tore down a goalpost, and when it came down, it whacked someone, and they get a very serious injury. Now that's fans. That's fans. That's not players. But he's like, why are we tolerating this kind of thing? And I go back to what I said last night when we did the bites, Donald. There needs to be penalties for schools. And the penalties need to be severe enough that the schools will do something about this problem. There need to be penalties in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. There need to be penalties where fans are barred from stadiums after doing this kind of thing. Teach people that this is not acceptable. Celebration is fine, but it must be done in a safe way. And you just can't put opposing players and fellow fans in danger the way Wake Forest did yesterday.
ESPN pointed out that the ACC is the only Power 5 conference that does
not
have a fine in place for schools who storm the court. I mentioned the SEC fine structure yesterday. $100K for first offense, $250 for a second offense, $500K for a third offense. That's the most stringent policy that's on the books, and the ACC is probably going to implement it. It's not going to be tomorrow, Duke fans. So don't wait by the phone, as we used to say back in the day. But that's probably going to change at some point. Let me get back to what you were saying about the other stuff, because when you look at all these different angles, because we saw more angles as the night went on of everything.
Man, that overhead angle shows a lot.
Well, the overhang angle is not what I'm worried about. There's more. Like, Flip being hurt isn't all that happened. There was a kid who got right in the face of Jared McCain, had to be pulled away by Duke manager. There was a kid in the face. Someone got in the face of Ryan Young and Stanley Borden as well. And even John Shire. John Shire was in the handshake line with Steve Forbes when he saw Flip get hurt. And he immediately rushed over to try and help. If you see that video, there are fans talking trash in the face of John Shire and the managers and the coaching and the players who were right there. I do want to quickly have if there's a positive spin of this, I do want to shout out the managers on our team who help protect our guys.
You mentioned this, yeah.
Ryan Young and Stanley Borden and some of the players. Like, the managers were helping get players off the court. That is not something that is part of their job description at all. But they do a lot to make Duke basketball operations go. They don't get enough credit, and they really, really put themselves in harm's way to protect players yesterday. And I thought, they need to get that shout out. But Jason, I go back to everyone saying that Flip did this and Flip started and initiated. He tripped them.
So absurd.
First of all, don't give those people air. Right? That's all. They're not changing their mind. They're not here for a healthy debate or argument. They're just here for clicks, engagement, into just crap posts. But if Flip had punched a dude who got in his face, we know what would happen, right?
Everyone be outraged. Yeah.
Jason, as you know, I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. We know what happens if a player goes into the stands.
Yep.
They're suspended for a
Malice at the
very
Palace,
long time.
baby.
They're suspended for a very long time. Players cannot go in the stands. Players cannot punch fans. So why can fans invade the court and taunt after game? We've seen more of these incidents after the game or even during the game because fans think because they pay money, they can say whatever they want and throw things in the court and get in somebody's face. And if you mentioned even a couple weeks, or it wasn't even a couple weeks ago, it was last week when Creighton beat UConn, a Creighton fan said something to Dan Hurley after the game, and Dan Hurley said something like, "Yo, I'm gonna, if we see you again down the line, we're gonna beat you." And people were like, Dan Hurley shouldn't have said that. Yes, he should have, because fan got in his face and said, because I paid my $42 as a student, that I can say whatever I want. Because I paid my tuition, I can run on the field and hit a player because they can't hit me back. I promise you, if Kyle Filipowski had responded by throwing hands, the court storming debate would have ended. It would have been over because Kyle Filipowski would have been suspended for the rest of the year and nobody would have been able to come to the floor anymore. And the problem is that we can't wait for that to happen for these rules to change. They have to understand. They have to understand that players, as you mentioned, and Gary Parrish has said, I said it yesterday. Home team, the team that wins the game have had players be hurt in the crush of court storming. I think when we rushed the field against Clemson, there was some guy who was like, "Yo, I had my helmet on. I'm glad I had my helmet on because I hit the ground and I hit my head, and I could have been seriously hurt because of the crush." He's like, the winning heals that, and they kind of throw that in there. But people get hurt all the time when this happens, and it shouldn't take a Kyle Filipowski or a Caitlin Clark for this to change. And I think what the ACC needs to do, you mentioned some of the penalties that need to be in place. They need to start doing that. As I mentioned, they're the only conference, Power 5 conference that doesn't have one. And when it comes to it, the ACC, that is inexcusable. You know why, Jason? Because they have Duke and UNC in this conference. But as we mentioned yesterday, two teams that every time they lose on the road, it does not matter how bad they are, people will storm the court against them. They have two examples every year where, like, it's not like this is something that, oh, we've never had this situation. It happens every year because Duke and UNC happen to lose a game every year. That happens. This needs to change. The ACC needs to put in these rules, and people on the internet just don't give these trolls air. Just don't. They're going to scream into the void. Let them do that because they're wrong. And we know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. They don't care. So save the energy because we're going to need it the rest of the stretch. We got some tough games coming up, but this could have changed the trajectory of our season in a very big way. And it should not take a moment like this for change to happen. But now that it has happened, change better come.
Hey, you said it. I got nothing more to add to that. All right, with that,
I will say one. I will say
go
one
ahead.
more thing. Let me say one more thing. Again, yesterday, I think both you and I were kind of like, we're not fully against court storming. We think it can be a wonderful, positive thing, a way to celebrate, right? If it's about players going into the stands to celebrate with their fans after the game, cool. If you want to still have it, here's a suggestion. If we're going to make a compromise, we have 97 clocks in every arena. Set it for 60 seconds if you need to. Let the handshake lines go. Give them 60 seconds or 96, whatever that is, for the opposing team to get out of there. Once the horn sounds, go at it, baby. Have fun. But if one person steps one toe on the floor before that, fines, as you mentioned, the $1 million fine, whatever it is. And that'll hopefully help stop it. I mean, again, it only takes one school to be like, we don't care about the $1 million fine. We'll pay the $1 million. But at the end of the day, it will stop most of this from occurring and make it where it is a safe celebration. We want everyone, when you go, down to 9th Street or party on West Campus at the bonfire, we're safe there too, right? Why can't we be safe in the arenas? I think that's the key here. Keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and look, I get the irony of Duke fans complaining about fans' behavior.
Right.
I mean, we are a school.
That, yeah.
Yeah, we are a school that has a little bit of a reputation in this regard. But you know what? Especially over the years.
And we've grown from it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, especially over the years, Duke fans have learned that there is a right way to support your team and a wrong way to support your team. We saw, we take our lead from Coach K, the GOAT, and he has over the years absolutely guided the Duke fan base and the Cameron Crazies toward being more about celebrating Duke and less about vulgarity and tearing down your opposition. Be loud, be creative, absolutely cheer your team on in a big, big way, but don't do it in a way that is grotesque and don't do it in a way that is unsafe. And Wake Forest clearly crossed both of those lines yesterday. And I'm pleased that the entire world of college basketball is talking about it. But it's unfortunate the only reason they're talking about it is because someone on Duke had to get hurt. And just, as we say, thankfully, we hope, we think it's not a bad injury to Kyle Filipowski. With that, Donald, we're done with episode 599. Donald, what comes after 599?
600.
There you go, baby. That'll be coming at you in your inbox. Episode 600 with the dog, Kenny Denard, coming at you in literally a matter of hours after you read this episode. Donald and I will be along to preview the action coming up for Duke this week. It's we're getting down the stretch here. One loss to Wake Forest does not destroy Duke's chances to take the overall number 1 seed in the ACC. Does not destroy Duke's chances to get a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. These things are still out there for the Blue Devils. We're going to be talking all about it. Until then, he's Donald. I'm Jason. Here's the Duke Band to play us out and take us home safely.